Well, good afternoon, guys. On this really beautiful August 27th, I'm still on Oahu, and today I'm hiking the Wilhelmina Ridge Trail, or just Wilhelmina Trail. Some people actually call it Ma'umaya now, whatever you want to call it. I'm already about 1,000 feet up. I'm hopefully getting to the Hawaiian rainforest and see some really nice endemic species, even though I haven't really studied all that much. Right off the bat, though, I see this native plant, which is Osteomeles anthyllidifolia, which is a member of the family Rosaceae. It is not totally endemic to the Hawaiian Islands. It is found also in the South Pacific, but it is native, and it's really interesting. I like how it has these compound leaves, which make it look like it's almost a member of the pea family, but if you were to see its flowers, you'd know it wasn't. I think it's commonly called the Hawaiian Hawthorn, even though it's not part of the Hawthorn genus. I believe it's Crataegious. Either way, let's head on. See some of the other bad invasives like the Uricloa. I can't remember the second part of its scientific name grass, the California grass. Some of these might be native in front of me. I can't really tell, but let's just head out. I mean, just look how great the views are already. Hopefully we'll be getting a lot more of that, and hopefully it's not too rainy at the top. It's quite a rough trail, but that's just how it is hiking in Hawaii. Well, this seems to be a koa, perhaps. Could also just be a non-native species of Acacia, but it's Acacia koaya. I couldn't really tell you for sure, but it's got the phyllodes as is characteristic of the genus Acacia. And this high up, I think it's going to tend to be one of the native species. That's where I'm heading to. Hopefully it wasn't too bright filming earlier. Well, I gotta get going. Now here's a flowering specimen of that Osteomeles, or Hawaiian Hawthorn I was just talking about, and I think it looks very clearly like a rose family flower to me. See some of its fruit there as well. It's good to see that it's doing very well here. Well, maybe it'd be nice if there's some other native species growing amongst them. Either way, to talk a little bit more about the Hawaiian rainforest here, it's one of the most, if not the most, biodiverse of Hawaii's four main habitats. The other one is competing with being the tropical Hawaiian dry forest. But the tropical dry forests have been very heavily degraded, so you have many more endangered species. So much of the intact forest habitat in Hawaii is in the tropical rainforest. And this is kind of important to know because I think a lot of conservation efforts are still dedicated towards the rainforest rather than the dry forest. All of that's starting to change. And it really is very difficult, especially on Oahu, to find intact tropical dry forest habitat. Most of it's completely overrun by the haole koa I was talking about in the other video, the Lucania leucocephala. Well, there's definitely quite a lot of degraded rainforest here. At the very tops of around 3,000 to 6,000 feet in elevation, you can find many native species thriving, including some rare ones. So hopefully we can find some of these today. Right now we're probably still technically in the dry forest region, but I'm starting to head up further towards the mountains where the rainfall is concentrated. Just notice a slow change what we can be finding around here. So that'll be really cool to see. This plant, which is also native, I believe is Dodonaea viscosa. I don't know entirely for sure, but that's what it looks like to me. Find it commonly along the coast. Well, that's interesting. It looks like an introduced orchid to me, or maybe it could be something native, but I just don't know for sure. Well, there's a flower, let me check. Yeah, it's definitely an orchid flower. Zoom in a little bit. I'll have to look that up. There are 3 native orchids to Hawaii. That's an interesting feature of Hawaii. It has very few orchids despite being such a tropical paradise. Most of the other Pacific islands have many more orchids, including islands quite a lot smaller, like Rarotonga, or the Cook Islands in general, I believe have approximately 15 native species of orchid. Samoa has 100. Hawaii, only 3, and it has to do with the fact that orchids are going to have a hard time distributing themselves to these islands because they really need to partner with a correct fungi. That being said, all 3 species you can find naturally in Hawaii are endemic. So that's very interesting. Either way, these mountains and islands are home to a lot of endemic species because of how isolated they are. It's a, I think, fairly well-known fact of the environment of Hawaii because they're like one of the most isolated island chains in the world, perhaps the most. The closest continental landmass being North America, about 2,500 miles away. That's a really lovely view. Yeah, I should move out here again. Either way, So it's very rare for species to make it to the Hawaiian Islands. And when they do arrive, if they do manage to survive, there's going to be a lot of pressure to evolve into a new species or variety of species and fill all the available niches, because there's definitely a lot open in Hawaii. Let's carry on. Now, you guys might be thinking this plant in front of us looks really cool if its palmately compound leaves is native to Hawaii. Surely a plant that looks like this must be endemic to the islands, but it's not. This is Heptapleurum, actinophyllum, formerly indigenous Flora, before that one was broken apart. You'll still hear people in the islands call it Flora, but it is unfortunately a non-native and quite invasive plant. It's a member of the family Araliaceae, which does have a few Hawaiian endemics, but that is not one of them, sadly. That's sort of the story of a lot of the plants here, just a ton of terrible non-native ones. There might be a Clusea, like one of the riding trees. Oh yeah, look at that. If I scratch a leaf here, it's gonna like leave a mark on it that changes brown eventually. Oh, it's a little hard to see, hold on. I'm not doing it very well. There you go. If you can figure out what that says, or what I meant to say, I don't know, I'll do like a cool video at your request. But either way, yeah, there's unfortunately a lot of non-native species we're going to probably find at these elevations. We're at Schinus, terebinthifolia, more Flora. I mean, look, it's such a cool looking plant, but I really wish something like that could be here that was native, but unfortunately, it's just not native. And a few hours along this trail. Now, I gotta be honest, I haven't studied nearly as much of the plants here as I should have. I'm a bit underprepared and I'm not gonna know what a lot of things are, but I'm trying. Oh, and there you can see why this plant gets its common name, octopus tree, because of its really cool looking inflorescence. It seems to have a bunch of little umbigols on them, like those little clusters of berries are umbel shaped. That is a characteristic of Araliaceae to have umbel inflorescences, while the closely related Apiaceae has the compound umbels, of course. Right, I'll just carry on, I gotta get going. Now we can see on this part where it flattens out a bit, one of the worst sites in the forests of these islands, these solid groves of, well, this is actually a mixed grove of Psidium, cattelyanum, and equisetifolia. Now you normally see just pure groves of one. Oh look, I didn't realize that forest is almost entirely dominated by the Casuarina. That side is much more dominated by the Psidium, the strawberry guava. But you normally see groves of trees, or just whole forests, dominated entirely by the Psidium cattelyanum. And it's just out of control. It's just such a terrible species that people really like it. They like it because the fruits are edible. Sorry, I can't remember if I ranted about this in my previous video, but just such a terrible plant. But people like them because they have edible fruit. But they're just super invasive and they shouldn't be growing this thick. But because there's nothing native that controls them, they just get out of control. Which really touches up on the two reasons of why different species can be super invasive here. Which is one, they don't have any native controls that are hindering them in the Hawaiian Islands like they do in their native range. So like the Erythrina gall wasp, which I mentioned in the previous video, that didn't have the native parasitic wasp controlling it until it was introduced to Hawaii, and now it's not much of a threat anymore to the native willy trees. Or sometimes it's because the species here have no adaptation to the invasive intruders, just like, again, the Erythrina gall wasp. That one, since the Erythrina trees here did not evolve with any native parasites or predators, they were very at risk to the gall wasp when it was introduced, and that really repeats itself a lot here. So biocontrol is becoming a very favored way to deal with many of these species because it greatly reduces the labor. And a lot of these species that state botanists and conservationists were assuming would be totally a lost cause it might actually be possible to eliminate again with the introduction of some of these parasites. It just depends on how well they play out. For strawberry guava, it's like this scale insect, I think, that makes these galls, or forces a tree to produce galls actually, that wastes its energy. For Myconia, it's going to be a moth when they finally introduce it. There's a whole lot of others, but let's just carry on, I guess. We got yet another orchid, which I'm positive is not native. I don't know what it is, but I'll look it up, and I'm almost guaranteed that it's going to be non-native when I finally figure it out. We are starting to get some more native plants as we head into the rainforest zone. This is, for instance, eluehe, that fern in front of us. It's a Dicronopterus linearis, I believe is the scientific name. It's a really cool one. It's a member of the family Glyciniaceae. I'll talk about it a little more in a second, but it's a very strong native competitor that's native to many of the islands throughout the Pacific. We're heading into the rainforest zone now. We were formerly sort of in the dry forest zone, but now we're getting really into the rainforest zone. So you're closer to the actual ridge lines of the Cattelyanum. That's the main mountain range on the east side of the island of Oahu. The plants are starting to change as a result, and the consequences are actually getting a lot more native species as we head up. Now that's a nice grove of that eluehe. Because the rainforests are not nearly as heavily degraded as the tropical dry forests in the Hawaiian Islands, and really the world over. Like, dry forests are way more threatened than tropical rainforests typically. Look at the pseudodichotomously branching leaves that just grow indeterminately, like just continue to grow and grow and can form quite big thickets. Like, this is all technically one leaf. The whole thing, let me zoom out, sorry. This is all one leaf attaching somewhere at the base, like probably to a rhizome. Just keep growing and growing, producing these really thick thickets that can help stabilize barren hillsides, which can actually be quite common in the Hawaiian Islands because they're constantly eroding. Like, despite being made of what seems to be pretty solid basaltic rock, it can actually be pretty unstable at times due to the way it forms. Like, as lava flows over each other, it can create pockets of air. So, and we never get filled in, so all this land can actually be quite unstable at times. And all the vegetation that grows in the mountains here as it decays produces pretty thick acids, pretty strong acids that eat the rock away. And as it seeps into it, because the rock's also very porous, so it fills up with water and get quite heavy, which again makes it heavy. So this weak, water-laden rock it's just getting eaten alive by these acids, and it just collapses and causes pretty intense landslides that can be pretty common in the very wet areas. So the eluehe ferns are doing a good job of growing quickly over barren hillsides and stabilizing them. Okay, now I'm starting to believe that the trees I'm seeing around me are definitely koa trees, the phyllodes, those bean pods. The famous koa trees of the Hawaiian Islands. Acacia koa is a scientific name. One of the two most important native tree species in the islands, the other being Megathyrsus polymorpha. Koa trees typically grow in habitat that's just barely like the bottom level of rain to be a rainforest here, which is about 60 inches, up to about 140 inches where they really stop thriving. And you get exclusively Megathyrsus polymorpha, along with some other tree species that are more adapted to rain. So they occupy sort of mesic to rainforest habitat, but not where it gets super rainy, which can actually be surprisingly common. Like, I know 140 inches sound like a ton of rain, but there's a lot of places in the islands that get more than that. And they're definitely the grandest and tallest trees you'll find here. They can get up to 100 feet tall. Pretty some of the most economically valuable lumber in the world, but thankfully I think they're more appreciated now for their importance as a native species. Of course, the genus Acacia here refers to the true Acacia genus native to Australia and a few other places. So it's related to like the wattles and, well, yeah, the wattles you find in Australia. I like the way they look. This looks so cool, and they do look like that sort of Australian growth pattern. I swear I can notice a lot of trees from there have, but it's just hard to put into words what it looks like. I don't think I've properly explained what a phyllodes is, but those sort of sickle-looking leaves are actually not the leaf blade. They are the petiole, the sort of leaf stem, as you might commonly call it, that's been enlarged and flattened to serve as a photosynthetic tissue. The actual leaf, the reason we can know this is not actually the leaf, or one of the reasons we know is because on very young koa trees, they'll have a typical compound or bipinnately compound leaves of the family Fabaceae. You'll sometimes see like the actual phyllodes growing, and then out of the phyllodes, out of the tip of it, is growing the compound leaf. It's very interesting looking. I don't know why they evolved to be that way, but it's clearly worked out well for them because there's over 1,000 species of acacia in the world. And now, as the microclimate gets rainier, we're getting into a range of some more rainforest species. Most importantly, the other major rainforest tree I mentioned, Megathyrsus polymorpha, commonly known as Ohiolahua. It's a member of the family Myrtaceae. Megathyrsus is a genus that likely evolved in New Zealand or New Caledonia, where most of the species are, but it has very fine tiny little seeds that can carry easily on the wind and have distributed themselves all across the Pacific Islands, as well as in some other places. Interestingly, not Australia, but it is found in New Guinea, New Caledonia, New Zealand. I think one species in South Africa and one is in southern South America. And of course, Pacific Islands. There's 5 endemic ones to the Hawaiian Islands. And Megathyrsus polymorpha is by far the most common. All the others are kind of range restricted. We might see some higher up in the Ko'olaus. Anyways, this is what it looks like. Well, it's really hard to really say specifically what it looks like because, as the name implies, polymorpha, it has many different morphs to it, but all part of the same species. So identification can be a little tricky at times, but the other ones are a bit distinctive. You can see here it's got a bit of a downy underside to the leaves. That can help you identify it sometimes. And the petioles are much smaller than the leaves. Some of the other species have much longer petioles. Well, its really big distinguishing feature is its beautiful red flowers, which you can see up there. I'll get a close-up shot eventually, but there's a bunch of profusion of red stamens that stick out everywhere. And it's just such a beautiful look to the flower. I really like it. I think it's my favorite tree in the whole world. New Zealand, some as well as are the Pohutukawa and the northern and southern ratas. Very cool plants all around. Sometimes it can be yellow instead of red, as you can see in that tree. Let's try a better zoom. We also see this other very important native species here. This is Freycinetia arborea. This is a member of the Pandanus family. It's not endemic, but it is native. You'll find it on other island chains throughout the South Pacific. Really cool. The Pandanus family is a very interesting one. It's got several genera, but they all have a lot of species in it. So overall, I think the family has about like 800 to 1,000 species. And there you can see its fruit, which, if you know what pandanus fruit looks like, this definitely looks a little bit like it, like an elongated version of it. Same little plates, and so it's got a weird little platey kind of structure to it, like interlocking pieces. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but if you're able to see a pandanus fruit, you might see what I'm getting at. Okay. I have a tendency to climb up other trees, like not parasitically, but epiphytically. I really got to get going because I'm not even close to the end of the trail, but I'm just so glad we're finally starting to see some native species. Even though there's some terrible ones as well, such as the Clydema hirta or Myconia hirta, the terrible coster's curse. Oh, I got more koa trees now. And some Scheffler or Heptapleurum, whatever you call them, the octopus tree. Well, you win some, you lose some, but I'm just happy we're getting more natives. Now, if you're wondering what I was saying about the phyllode, hopefully this can give you a better showcase of what I was trying to say. So this green thing I'm holding is a phyllode, and these leaflets are the true leaves. So this tree has evolved to have, along with all the other acacias, to have changed its leaf stem into this flattened structure for photosynthesis and has lost its actual true leaflets. And you can see a few cases of this here. Look carefully, like right in the background there. It's a really interesting thing, and I don't know why it happened, but it did. It's a bit of a quirk of evolution because I don't think it really offers that much advantage to have phyllodes instead of true leaves. Maybe having leaflets is an issue, and this is a simple way to evolve out of them, though many members of Fabaceae do have evolved basically back to having a single leaf instead of many leaflets. So I'm not sure what would happen with them. So I think it's maybe just a bit of a quirk of evolution. Now, here's a fun little fact about ridgeline hiking in Hawaii, is that sometimes it gets so steep, especially towards the tops, you need these ropes, which various generous people have preset to really get up at times. So I try, well, okay, I gotta turn the camera off, but I just use them to pull yourself up, get a bit of leverage, and some trails can get quite a lot, like over 800 feet of elevation gain will be with these ropes. This might not be so easy for you guys to see as it is for me, but it seems we have another species of Scheffler or Heptapleurum. There's this one right here, which is new. I compare it to that one down there. Obviously, one has this inflorescence out and the other doesn't, but the other one behind us definitely seems to have different colored leaves that are pale underneath and much less light green on top. Like it's a very dark green. I'll have to look it up. They could also be Cecropias, I guess. I kind of doubt that, but I'm getting to the point where I might need to end this video and start a part 2, but I don't quite want to do that yet. I'm getting about 1,700 feet up by now, which is a pretty decent elevation. Oh gosh. I'm just getting covered in bugs. getting covered in something, and the trail's getting quite slick here. It's not so muddy here, but it's getting very muddy in other parts, and it's only going to get worse. So, that's what will happen. Also, it's another fun facet of hiking in Hawaiian rainforest is this fern, but also some grass, the eluehe or Dicronopterus linearis, which I already mentioned. You can really start to cut your legs up as you continue to hike. And it's not bothering me yet, but it's been scratching them up, and I know eventually it's going to start to cut and cut and cut. By the end of it, I'm just going to be really begging for relief. In fact, that's what happened the first time I hiked this trail. And I once again neglected to wear long pants, so this should be very fun. A good example of the Freycinetea arborea climbing this tree, this koa tree right there. You can see its adventive roots, I think they're called, or adventitious roots, cling to the tree. Again, not parasitizing and stealing nutrients, but just need to get a leg up and get more sunlight in a often very unsunny place. Out in the distance is a good example of a scraped bare hillside, likely from a landslide. We can't really see the bottom of it, but you can see the eluehe ferns growing back very quickly over it and covering it up. It's a very frequent occurrence in the islands here. Well, not super frequent, but it definitely occurs a lot in other Pacific islands. And it's one of the main actions of erosion is wearing these islands down, back down to nothing. Not really seeing any more interesting species, a lot less invasives, like less flora, less ironwood or ecology, less Myconia, or kind of whatever, Costa's curse, whatever genus you want to place it in. But not many more interesting trees going around. You know, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to break videos into parts 1 and 2 yet, but I think I'll do that to this one as well. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.